Good morning. We are in the Gemara on Kuf Tes Amud Beis 109b. The line begins with the word, it's the middle of the page. The line begins with the word Mea Chamishim Mikva Tara. There's a colon, and then it says V'lo Yifchus Eloi Ma'arba, and the other colon. Right in the middle of the page. You see it? Between the two colons. Kuf Tes Amud Beis 109b. Yeah, there we are. 109b, yeah, we have it. Tes Beis, sorry?
Continue, I just forgot.
Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. So the Mishnah told us that no matter the person's financial ability, he should not have any less than 4 cups of wine. That's what the Mishnah told us. So you can drink more should you please, but it's a minimum of 4. Yeah, that's the obligation. We discussed already in the past the nature of the obligation, the kind of wine, the kind of cup, the importance of the order, and so on. So now the Gemara asks the following.
That's interesting. You were saying how you shouldn't say another bracha because, I guess it's.
What do you mean another bracha?
You were discussing, you skipped if you missed.
Yeah, if you missed one, you make up for it. Yeah.
If there was an issue about you shouldn't appear to be more than 4 cups.
Yeah. It shouldn't appear as if you're drinking a fifth out of the obligation to have cups. But if you're doing so because you're enjoying it during your meal, and you're allowed to have as many as you'd like. All right. But if it's being done so in like the ceremonious sense of drinking another cup, and it looks like you're adding to the sage's mitzvah. Right. But if you're just drinking because you like wine during the meal, no problem. Enjoy. Okay, so now the Gemara introduces something very interesting, which is as follows. How is it possible that the sages would enact a practice, midi some matter, to asi baal sakana, that can bring one to a danger? And 4 cups of wine would bring one to a danger.
Was this the Zugos issue?
Zugos. How so?
Yeah. Is there like a difference, let's say, I don't know practically, but what people do in their homes, but let's say you have your cups for the 4 cups, and you have a wine glass for one you might want to enjoy. Okay, but what about, is like we touched upon, is it wrong to drink more because you don't want to?
So that's like just what you're saying.
Right.
If you're drinking because you're enjoying your meal, knock yourself out.
Okay.
But if you're doing so ceremoniously with a blessing, then it gives the impression that you're adding to the sage's mitzvah.
Yeah, especially if you're using the same cup.
I suppose that adds to it, yeah. But I don't know if the physical cup makes a difference. You're holding a different cup if you're doing it. In fact, Chabad rabbis would refrain from saying l'chaim during the seder.
Right.
Even if they were drinking wine during the meal. They didn't explain themselves. It would seem that perhaps they didn't do that because reciting l'chaim over the cup of wine would indicate like another ceremonious kind of drinking.
Right.
Perhaps that's why they're afraid. Anyway, so the Gemara asks now, how is it possible that the sages would enact something that can bring to a danger? So why would 4 cups of wine bring to a danger? So explains the Gemara. Tanya, did we not learn in the Mishnaic text, La yechel adam today, a person should not eat in pairs of 2. La yishta today, a person should not drink in pairs of 2. La yikaneach today, and he shouldn't wipe himself or something like that. Like kaneach means to like clean. Today in pairs of 2. And a person should engage in marital intimacy today in pairs of 2. End quote from the Mishnaic text. So the Gemara this is what's referred to as zugos, pairs. And the Gemara understands that doing activities in pairs invites negative spiritual reality that causes one danger. And therefore the Gemara asks, how is it possible that our sages enacted to drink 4 cups of wine, which is essentially pairs, just 2 pairs of 2?
What about double dating?
Dangerous for many reasons, yeah.
We discussed this in another.
We had another check that's, where it came up.
And sitting in a barbershop or something. drinking too much
Remind me.
wine. He was keeping track of how many cups he was having.
Yeah.
He became so, I think,
That he
inebriated
that ended up
he
being.
forgot. And his wife used that opportunity.
This is
He
ringing the
was
bell.
having marital issues or something.
Yeah. Something like that rings a bell. I don't remember.
Something.
Yeah. So the idea is, and we spoke about this in other tractates when we discussed these kind of what people would call superstitions. We should appreciate that the world we live in today. We talked about this before, but the world we live in today is detached from the spiritual reality. It's just the nature of it, both in the positive and the negative. And the most classic example is we neither have prophecy. You don't have the prophecy today like you have in biblical times. And we also simultaneously don't have the strong urge to go worship idols. Right? Because the positive spiritual force and the negative spiritual force are always equal in measure. So the desire or the allure of spirituality will be equal in both its positive and negative manner. So in a time when godly spirituality, divine spirituality, Torah spirituality is easily accessible, so is negative spirituality. And certain behaviors were associated with inviting this kind of negative spirituality. This is what the Gemara refers to as a shade, which is often translated as a demon. I don't like the translation demon because it conjures up Christian images of
a red thing with horns.
A red thing with horns and a tail that's three-pronged.
Right.
And it's obviously not what we're talking about. That's why a negative spiritual force or a damaging spiritual force, right, which is another thing that is a prevalent problem today also. There's this assumption that if it's spiritual, it's good.
Yeah.
Why? Right? We have to remember that the Torah is not to bring us to spirituality. It's to bring us to godliness. And the godly could be expressed or concealed in the material, and it could be expressed and concealed in the spiritual.
Is there a difference between godliness and spirituality?
Absolutely. Eating kosher is godly. It's not very spiritual. It's very physical. You're eating a steak, but it's godly because you're doing it the way Hashem asked you to do it. So it's a godly activity. Making a bracha, it's a godly activity. And then there are spiritual experiences that are straight out damaging, like idol worship.
Oh.
Right? Or like
between two palm trees.
Right? So in this case, it's zugos, these negative spiritual forces that are associated with drinking in pairs. And therefore can have negative physical consequences in a world where the spiritual and the physical are sync. So negative spiritual behavior has its negative literal physical effect and damages the person, brings cause and harm to the person. Right? The person can meditate on very lofty spiritual ideas that are just outright heresy. And it can bring a person spiritual enlightenment, but it's outright heresy. Certain versions of Hinduism and Buddhism and all kinds of things like that. Christianity for the same price also, meditating on the spiritual components and theology that exist within
Didn't Bilam
Christianity. Bilam, exactly. Bilam is a classic example.
He used the bone in a certain way.
Yeah, so the Torah talks about certain things that a person can't do to divine the future using all kinds of spiritual forces that are negative, straight out negative. Bilam is a great prophet, very spiritual man.
Right.
Likewise, Yisrael, before you came to Torah, is a very spiritual man, but all in idol worship.
Yeah.
Right? So the spiritual can also be negative. So today, our world, again, our physical and spiritual are detached. So, or more, less overtly attached. So we have the prophecy and we have no allure for idol worship. But in a world where you do have that spiritual and physical integration, then physical activities can have spiritual negative consequence and spiritual activities can have physical negative consequence. And likewise, in the reverse, spiritual activity can have physical positive consequence and so on. So there's an association with doing things in pairs that invites negative spiritual energy that brings danger. And therefore the sages, the Gemara is asking, how is it possible our sages enacted to drink 4 cups of wine? That's pairs.
Right.
You're making the guy invite negativity. You're inviting spiritual damage that causes the person physical harm. That's the Gemara's question. Yeah, you want to ask something?
Yeah, just on your previous thing, like I remember reading in Torah where it said that relating to Bilam, or that his power of sorcery was like the equivalent to Moshe's power.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
of the opposite spectrum.
The point. That's exactly right.
Right.
Powerful.
But I guess I thought we that like sorcery and was just like hocus pocus fantasy stuff.
Well, then Bilam wouldn't be a prophet. So again, when you use the English word, it ends up being associated with like
Cauldron.
colloquial English understanding of that word.
Yeah.
Right. So it
Which-
becomes that's right. So it becomes very difficult to understand.
Right.
That's why I say when you translate the word shade, which the Gemara is going to use as demon, you think of the guy in the red face with poking
Right.
horns, right? So that's a problem with translating into a foreign language, that the language it brings with it all the associations of whatever the culture of that language assumes and associates with that language. So the sorcery is described in English very much doubt has any real validity, but it doesn't mean it didn't exist at some point. It's somewhere in some place,
Right.
in some other sense. So don't call it that. Call it something else.
Right.
It's not an angel that's gone awry. Like when Yaakov fought with the
It's that
angel of Esau.
the angel that Yaakov is fighting with is doing his job. It didn't go awry. It's exactly what God wanted him to do.
It's not
Right.
a negative.
There's no such thing as an angel not doing what God wants,
Yeah.
right? There's no such thing as anything not doing what God wants, except for a human,
Right.
which is even free choice. Everything else does exactly what God wants, but it could be what God wants us to do is to be the power of a force for negative, to
Right.
entice the person to bring out greater strength in the person by challenging the person, like in the case of the angel that fought Yaakov.
Trying to distinguish between this negative force and an angel that's
Right,
has a
again, so
purpose to do
in
negative.
English, we use the word angel, we associate with positive.
Right.
But who said that's what the word malach means in Hebrew?
Right.
Malach means a messenger of God,
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So
right? So
then
the,
pretty much
the
answers
messenger
the question.
here is to
Yeah.
challenge Yaakov. So it presents itself as a challenge.
That's not
Negative.
necessarily a
In-
demon as
Whatever they
it's
think of in
being
English.
described as.
Right.
The English cult,
Okay.
no, that's correct.
In
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Using the English language and the associations that come along with it in culture that we speak English is unfair to what it's meant in its original Hebrew.
Right.
Right? The same words to describe the angels that come to tell Abraham he's gonna have a child, malach, is the same word you to describe the one that fights Yaakov.
Right.
Or the
Both
ones that go
malach.
that destroy
The ones that
Sodom.
it's malach is a messenger of God.
There's also
Right.
Malach HaMavet, the angel of death.
Correct.
Okay.
Also angel, the same word malach.
Angel. Yeah.
His mission from
An
God
angel
is
of death.
to bring to end people's lives. That's his mission
Right.
from God. So
And
it's a
it's not
question of
wrong.
So the
it's not
angel
doing anything
That's
wrong,
his mission.
So the
but it
name-
presents itself to us as a challenge in order to achieve whatever the purposes
Hebrew
are
word
to
for
the challenges.
the Hebrew word for demon here is not the same word for angel.
No,
It's a different
Shade.
energy.
shade.
Different-
It's a concealed, divine energy. It's concealed to such depth that it presents itself as a challenge, as negative, as destructive. But part of God's world, like everything else in this world. If you want to go like more, you want to go broader speaking, we can call jealousy. The notion of jealousy in the world is a demon. It's not a tangible force, it's a spiritual force, jealousy, and it's a destructive one. Right?
Yeah.
Love is a spiritual force. It can be very damaging, it can be very beautiful. There are spiritual realities that push us in life in all different directions. Some of it are positive and some of it are challenging.
Can also be hurtful.
Exactly. Right. So
But it's
these
not
are
reciprocated.
these are non-tangible spiritual forces
Right.
that have very strong power. Right. Okay, so all to say that again, sorry, yeah.
So is an emotion a spiritual force?
One can make that case.
Yeah.
Right. Certainly, like Chassidus, I believe, would say so. It's a spiritual force. I mean, it's not tangible.
Right.
We experience it physiologically. Our
Right.
heart beats faster, oxytocin is released in our brain or whatever.
Right.
Right? But the force itself is an abstraction. It's certainly metaphysical.
Right.
Again, spiritual in English has associated with all kinds of, like for some reason doing this is associated with spirituality. Not
Yeah.
sure why, but some reason it is.
Right.
Right. But
And like this is prayer.
yeah,
The
for some reason.
energy flows.
Yeah, whatever that means. And for some reason, all these different, we think put these words in English, it becomes
Yeah.
associated with all kinds of other things. But like a better word for it is metaphysical,
Right.
meaning it's non-tangible.
Right.
Love is a non-tangible entity. It's very real. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all to say that in a world where the spiritual and the physical are very integrated, there's physical activity that can invite either positive or damaging spiritual realities. And pairs brings along with it a negative, damaging spiritual force. Call it that. Okay, so this is the Gemara's question. So how could the sages enact 4 cups of wine, which are pairs and therefore damaging? So continues the Gemara. Rav Nachman responds and says, the reason why the sages enacted 4 cups of wine, notwithstanding the fact that it's pairs, is because Leil Shimurim, the Torah describes the night of the Seder as Leil Shimurim, the night when God guards, the night of guarding. Leil HaShumur Uba Min HaMazikin. It's the night that guards and protects us from any damaging force. And therefore, they enacted the 4 cups of wine on the Seder night because we're not worried. That's answer 1, yeah? Then the night of Pesach guards us against it. Rav Amar, Rava says, Kais shel bracha, a cup over which a blessing is recited. Specifically in this case, Kais shel bracha is associated with benching, which is the 3rd cup of wine. Right? So you have 4 cups, but one of them, the cup over which benching is recited, mitzdaref l'toiva, only becomes combined to other cups that is drunk with for good. The einim mitzdaref l'ra, but does not combine to be for negative, which means you're left with an odd number 3. Following?
In other words, cup 4 is combined with cup 3, and since cup 3 can only be combined with good, therefore,
because of the benching.
Because of the benching, because the kosher bracha, the cup of bracha. That's correct. It's a cup of blessing, yeah. Let's see how the Mashbam says it. That's right. It breaks up the pairs. And you're no longer in you're no longer drinking pairs. Ravino, so that's answer number 2. Answer number 1 is that the night guards us, the night of Pesach guards us. Number 2 is the cup of bracha, the benching, breaks up the pairs and therefore turns into an odd number because it doesn't combine for negative, only combines for positive. Ravina says, Arba kasi tikni rabbanon, 4 cups of wine that our sages enacted, deracheres, that's there to represent our freedom in a manner of freedom. Kol chad v'chad, each and every one of these cups, mitzvah ba'api nafshe, are an independent mitzvah. So you're not drinking in pairs. Pairs are only an issue when they are drunk as a pair, or the activity is engaged in as a pair. But in this case, they're not. Each and every one is its own established mitzvah. Its own singular established mitzvah. And as a result, each one is independent of the next, and therefore they're not to be considered pairs at all. And this is going to become a theme. The Gemara is going to go forward to describe how when you break up the activities, it no longer has that negative power because it's no longer a pair. It's 2 singular activities, not a singular pair of 2, but they're individual actions unrelated one to the next if it's broken up properly. That's going to become the Gemara's discussion.
If you had 2 brachot for the 4 cups, 1 bracha covering 2 cups, then you may have an issue.
Sorry?
I'm saying if you had only 2 brachot over 4 cups of wine, let's say you made a bracha for the 1st cup and the 2nd cup was covered under the 1st cup, and then again you needed to do a bracha for the 3rd cup, and the 4th was covered under the 3rd, then you may have an issue with
so now you bring up a good point. Because they're individual cups, we're making a bracha on each one hagafen separately. That's the Alter Rebbe's ruling, following this one tradition. that each cup of the 4 cups of wine you make hagafen again, because it's 4 separate entities. Yeah. Others of the other view, actually, you don't make 4 hagafens. You only make hagafen on cup 1 and cup 3. Because you break up benching between cup and 2 and 3, right? But the Alter Rebbe rules following this that you make a bracha hagafen on each of the one individually. Now here's the question. This is what I wrote about once. I'm going to share with you tomorrow. We'll look at the sources. What did it say here? It said each of the cups of wine are an independent mitzvah, and if they don't combine as pairs, because they're individual. Right? With me?
Yeah.
Right? Now you're saying correctly that consequently we make a bracha hagafen on each one individually. Right? Even though you didn't bench between cup 1 and 2, right? You're still making another bracha hagafen on cup 2. It's an independent mitzvah. The question becomes like this. The halacha is, why do we make a bracha? Blessed are you, God, our Lord, who has commanded us to drink 4 cups of wine.
So theoretically, it should cover all 4.
Why do we make such a bracha?
Well, because each one is an independent mitzvah.
So then make a bracha.
Right.
And then my second one, we don't do that.
Oh, didn't we learn the same principle in Sfiras Omer?
Oh, yeah, no, that what?
That 49 days, it's a mitzvah to count 49 days, but if it's not like, you don't say one mitzvah.
So it's one singular,
right.
It's possible, according to some opinions, it's one singular mitzvah divided in 49 days.
Right.
Okay, so now apply that to here. It's one singular mitzvah drunk in 4 different cups.
Right.
Which you are correct. That this is why we don't make a bracha. We don't make a bracha. Thank you, God, for the mitzvah of drinking 4 cups of wine. Because you're not doing it in one shot.
Right.
Doesn't that just contradict what we just finished saying? That there are 4 different mitzvahs, and that's why they don't combine. Moreover, which bracha did you say we do 4 times because it's separate mitzvahs?
I was suggesting, you do
and you're correct.
1 and 3.
Which bracha do you make each time? What does that got to do with mitzvah?
No, it's not.
It's good questions.
Yeah.
So the whole thing seems to contradict each other. On the one hand, you're saying correctly that it's one singular mitzvah divided in 4, and so if we don't make a bracha, thank you for the mitzvah. On the other hand, as the Gemara says here, it's 4 different mitzvahs, and therefore make hagafen 4 times. If it's 4 different mitzvahs, you should make baruch Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam 1 4 times. First, listos kosher to drink cup 1, then listos kosher to drink second cup, but we don't make hagafen instead. What a funny thing.
Yeah, that's a hard argument to say.
Yeah. So this is my suggestion. Yeah, sorry.
Saying it's a hard argument to make to say it's 4 separate mitzvah.
It's right, but the Gemara said that.
Yeah, no, I know.
Kol chad v'chad mitzvah b'apei nafshei. Each and every one is a singular individual mitzvah, which is why it doesn't combine to be pairs.
So,
and you're correct that that's, at least according to this view, the Alter Rebbe's view, this is others, why we say hagafen 4 times. But yet, when it comes to making the bracha over mitzvah, we don't make a bracha over the mitzvah because it's one big mitzvah divided into 4. So is it one big mitzvah or is it divided in, what's the story?
So I wonder what the halacha would be then. But let's say the person, you know how if a person misses one of the days, then they can't say a bracha anymore. So a person misses the cup.
That's a serious question, which we're going to learn.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Because we learned already that once, the 4 cups have to be drunk in order.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So if you miss one after the next cup, it's difficult to make up for it.
Right.
Because if it's before the next cup, there's ways to make up for it. But if it's right,
it's the seder and the seder.
That's correct, and that's why we made this whole thing about. That's what you were saying before. You can't make another bracha hagafen because that would indicate you're making the 5th cup, maybe.
Right.
Right. Okay. So this is what I suggested based on the Alter Rebbe's reading, and I want to show you the Alter Rebbe's language tomorrow. Maybe it's here. Maybe it's here. 1 second. Actually, sorry.
It is actually wild as a concept because normally every time you wash, and you say Prigafen. And then you're good for all brachas related to eating and drinking.
But you don't do that here.
Correct. That's why it's
So this is
Makes
chapter
Anomaly.
chapter 473.
major.
I think
Shabbos is
it's
not a
here.
mitzvah to have. They should have wine, but not here. It's specifying 4 cups. And whiskey.
Find it. Okay, 1 second, I'm getting there. Sorry. Wait, no, it's not here. It's not in this. Sorry, it's not in this chapter. Okay, so I'll just share with you the content. So look at the Gemara again. Let's look at the exact language of the Gemara. Bottom of Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, Kuf Tes Amud Beis, 109b. Arba Kaisi Tikna Rabbanan. 4 cups are sages established. What's the next 2 words? Next 2 words. Bottom of Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, Kuf Tes Amud Beis, 109b. 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 Kuf Tes Amud Beis. Sorry. Yeah. This was the answer, that there are 4 cups of wine. Arba Kaisi Tikna Rabbanan. Our sages established 4 cups. What's the next 2 words? Next 2 words, no.
Arba.
Last line of Kuf Tes Amud Beis.
Okay.
Last line. Arba Koiset taken up. This is the Gemara's answer. 4 cups are sage established.
Rabbanan. Derech. Chirut.
Derech cherus. What does that mean? Derech in a manner.
Yeah.
Cherus of freedom.
Oh, there's freedom.
Kol chad v'chad. Each and every one. Continues the Gemara. Mitzvah is a mitzvah ba'api nafshei on its own. Top of the next page.
Ah.
So why add those 2 words derech cherus? What's the point the Gemara trying to say here? Why is it on pairs? What's the Gemara's point here? No? What's the main
Each one
point?
demonstrates freedom.
1 second, before you introduce that, because I just highlighted the 2 words.
Okay.
Just this, the flow of the Gemara. The Gemara asked, how could the sages do 4 words pairs? Answers the Gemara.
Mitzvah.
No. What's the point of the answer? No. You said it before. Because each one's individual and separate from each other.
Right.
That's the main point here. They don't combine to be a pair because they're each individual.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So
Gemara said.
what's the main point here? That
That's-
each one's separate mitzvah.
Right.
So why is the word derech cherus added here? In a manner of freedom. Just say, Arba Kursi Tikna Rabbanan, 4 cups are say which is established. Kol chad v'chad, mitzvah b'nafshei. Each and every one is a mitzvah on its own. That's the main point here, that it's a mitzvah on its own. Why add this word derech cherus? In a manner of freedom. What's the relevance? The point is that they're separate mitzvahs.
Right.
Could be that.
To refer back to the leaning.
What's the point of Gemara? Why is the Gemara making this statement? Again, to answer the question, why it's not pairs. The main point is they're individual. That's the point.
You're arguing that you have to say Asher Kiddushana to signify that it's a mitzvah, right? So that then bearing on why this language is included.
1 second.
Freedom.
Understand the question here. Understand my question first. We'll get there in a second. First, understand the question? Before I
I
introduce
think your question was
before I introduce-
why are you including these words, Derek?
cherus, exactly. So what
Because you've already established that each cup is in
exactly, that's the main point here. In other words,
You're asking why are we including these
correct.
words?
Why is this not relevant to the answer?
And I was suggesting that perhaps maybe it's because we only say right for your adopting.
You're working backwards. The Bari Paragafen is based on this Gemara.
Okay.
So you can't use that as an answer. You follow what I'm saying? Let me understand what I'm doing. I introduced you to halachas. Number 1, that we don't make a bracha on the mitzvah because it's one big unit. And number 2, that we make a gofen because it's 4 separate mitzvahs, right? And I asked about that contradiction. And that contradiction comes in the halacha that's based on this Gemara. So you can't use those halachas as an answer to the Gemara.
Okay.
Right.
I'm
doing-
now.
1 second. So I'm going the reverse. I'm explaining to you how this works. I'm going back to the Gemara, analyzing it properly. And if I understand it correctly, then maybe I'll explain these 2 halachas that come out of it. Follow? You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So here's perhaps why the Gemara is introducing derech cherus, which we'll get to what you're saying. But it goes the other way. It comes from the Gemara to the halacha, not halacha to the Gemara.
Can you repeat it again? I didn't.
Which part?
The answer to why the derech eretz.
I didn't answer yet.
Oh,
I'm just explaining to you that Rabbi was suggesting that it's because of a halacha.
Okay.
So it's the other way around. The halacha comes from this Gemara. It's the reverse. So in other words, if I have a contradiction in the halachas, I have to go back to the Gemara, understand it properly, and see if I understand the Gemara properly, how it would explain why this halacha is not a contradiction. So if I have a question on the halachas here, why is it that we're making by paragraph 4 times when seemingly the halacha said here it's 4 mitzvahs? Hagafen has nothing to do with mitzvah. Hagafen has to do with enjoying wine. And conversely, there's another halacha which says you don't make a bracha on the mitzvah of drinking 4 cups because it's actually one singular mitzvah. And yet here the Gemara says it's 4. And as a result of that 4 mitzvahs, I'm making 4 hagafens. Right? So these are halachas that come out of this Gemara. It seems contradictory. So as a result, I'm going back to the Gemara, analyzing it better and seeing if I can come to explanation as to why the halacha comes out that way. Follow? So to introduce the Gemara, the halacha as an answer for the Gemara's question is it's
backwards.
That's right. We're reverse engineering. Well, okay. So here's why perhaps it says derech eretz. You'll remember we learned this. There are 2 components to the mitzvah of drinking 4 cups of wine. There's the actual drinking 4 cups of wine, and then there's the enjoying it. So, for example, we learned if a person drinks their wine raw, he didn't dilute it. What did the halacha say?
Won't enjoy it.
And therefore,
it doesn't fulfill the mitzvah.
Which mitzvah didn't he fulfill?
Well, you said there's 2 components.
The halacha said that that the 4 cups of wine he fulfilled.
Yeah.
But the enjoyment part of it, the derech eretz of it, the manner of freedom of that wine, that he didn't enjoy.
Okay.
So which means.
Well, he said he does enjoy it raw.
This guy, he doesn't because it's disgusting. You can't drink the 4 cups, right?
Okay, right?
You can't enjoy that.
Right.
So he fulfilled his mitzvah of 4 cups, but the derech eretz of it, the freedom of the wine, he didn't fulfill.
Right.
Right? Follow?
Yeah.
Because he didn't enjoy it. But 4 cups he technically drank. So what's the halacha saying? What's Ravina saying here now? 4 cups of wine in a way of freedom are say which establish each one a mitzvah on its own. When he separates between the 4 mitzvahs of 4 cups of wine, which element of the 4 cups of wine is he separating? 4 different cups of drinking, or 4 different
enjoyments?
4 different enjoyments.
So he has to dilute in those 4 cups.
Of course, it's diluted anyway. Okay, don't.
No, I missed that point. Okay.
Don't mix up the halachas.
No,
I'm just bringing up the dilution point to indicate the separation between the drinking of the wine and the enjoying of the wine.
Okay, so the
he,
enjoyment part allows you to make the independent.
So when Ravina says that the 4 cups are 4 separate mitzvahs, it's one singular mitzvah to drink 4 cups of wine, but you have to enjoy it 4 separate times. So the separation between the mitzvahs that stop it from combining into a negative pairs is not the 4 cups of wine are divided into 4. They're not. It's one mitzvah to drink 4 cups of wine, which is why we don't make a bracha. But it's 4 different enjoyments.
Right.
So it's both.
And because it's 4 different enjoyments, therefore which bracha do you make over enjoyment?
Right, great.
It's making 4 different agafens. And not 4 different brachas on the mitzvah. Because the mitzvah element, the mitzvah to drink 4 cups of wine is 1. But the mitzvah to drink 4 cups of wine has 4 individualized enjoyments.
So it has both elements of singularity and divisibility.
What does that?
Right.
So the singularity part of it is on the mitzvah. The mitzvah 4 cups of wine. But the mitzvah of enjoyment is divided into 4. That's right. The mitzvah of enjoyment is 4 cups of wine, which is why you're making 4 hagafens. Because that's how you express your enjoyment.
So the Zugais issue is taken care of by way of the fact that it's one mitzvah.
So I'll go even more. The Gemara's question, how could the sages enact 4 cups of wine as a pairs as a problem, is only a question on the enjoyment. If you're doing it directly just from mitzvah without any enjoyment, there's no negative forces associated with that. But when the sages say you have to enjoy 4 cups of wine, your enjoyment can invite negative spiritual energy. Okay. To which Ravina says, the enjoyment is 4 separate actions, not pairs. The derech eretz, the manner of freedom, the enjoyment is kol chad mitzvah b'nafshei, a separate mitzvah. Each enjoyment is to be individualized, and therefore a new agafen, not a new bracha asher kedushan mitzvah itself. It's a new hagafen to express that I'm enjoying it again, as per the sage's instruction. I have to enjoy it again, enjoy it again.
So there are 4 separate enjoyments.
Exactly. Even though it's one mitzvah. And that's why there's no bracha because the drinking of 4 cups of wine, which I can do without enjoying, right? Because I can do the 4 cups of wine by drinking raw wine. I just failed on the enjoyment part. So that is one mitzvah. But the enjoyment part is 4 separate.
I was tying the zugod.
Follow?
I was tying the zugod issue as it's one mitzvah.
Hmm?
I was resolving the zugod's issue, not with saying it's 4 separate enjoyments, but rather saying that it's one mitzvah. The other part of this is being one.
The Gemara doesn't suggest that as an answer, which is a good question. Why did the Gemara say it's one big mitzvah?
Right. That's how I would.
But the Gemara doesn't even bring that up.
The zugod's.
The Gemara doesn't even bring that up.
And the enjoyment is just for enjoyment.
But the Gemara doesn't even bring that up. And what I'm suggesting solves that problem. Because the question of the mitzvah is not the problem. The problem is the enjoying something 4 times. To which the Gemara says it's 4 separate enjoyments. You follow that, Meir?
Yeah, but I think we just opened the
Can of worms? Yes, we did. No.
Because now we're gonna say that to express freedom, this derech eretz is showing your enjoyment of wine.
Correct.
So now, what if a person doesn't enjoy wine?
That's a good that's why I was giving the example of the guy who drinks raw wine.
Right.
He fulfilled the mitzvah of drinking 4 cups, but didn't fulfill the derech eretz.
Right. Right.
Right? So because what's divided into 4 is not the mitzvah of the drinking, but the mitzvah of enjoying, therefore to express that, you have to make hagafen 4 times. Because hagafen is a thank you for the enjoyment.
Right.
Which is what's happening in 4 different occasions.
Right.
Which explains further. We learned once that if you drank all 4 cups at one shot, you only fulfilled your obligation for 1 cup, not 4. They have to be separate. So one way to think about this, have to be separate because you have to have a separate bracha for each of the 4 cups. But now we have another element. That was only one singular enjoyment. If you drink all 4 cups at once, you only enjoyed 1 intake of wine. And you have to have 4 separate enjoyments of wine. And if they must be separated. Separated by your enjoyment, and therefore separate bracha hagafen, not a separate bracha asher kedushanim mitzvah. This is what I wrote up a couple of years ago. And tomorrow I'll show you the Alter Rebbe's language, and the Shulchan Aruch makes it very, very clear that the separation between the cups of wine is not in the mitzvah to drink 4 cups, but in the enjoyment of those 4 cups that separates between one and the other. The derech eretz. Because if the only thing was separated into 4 mitzvahs, there's no reason for those words derech eretz here. You just say arba kaseh tikun rabbanan. Our sages established 4 cups. Kol chad b'chad, each one separate mitzvah. But it says our sages established 4 cups in a way of freedom, each one separate mitzvah. Meaning the way of freedom in the drinking is 4 separate mitzvahs. Which is why it's expressed in hagafen rather than in asher kedushanim mitzvah. This is my suggestion. I got it published, and that's it. This is my little contribution to the Torah discussion. Sorry?
Where can we find that online?
You have to search All Torah's archive. All Torah has their
All
Torah has every 2 weeks they publish a Torah journal.
Right. I'm saying
you search their archive.
That as a student?
No, I was married. I think I was in Kollel at the time. Actually.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
Was that in Kollel or was it?
No, man, you weren't a student at All Torah when you wrote this thing. So it wasn't like a class.
No. I wasn't in All Torah for sure not. Because I wasn't learning psachim then.
Okay.
We're learning Gittin then, I think. No, Gittin next year. We learned Kedushin that year. Maybe I remember. But it wasn't that. It wasn't then. It was either I was in a Kollel or maybe after I got married. Even if I moved here, I don't remember. Or something after I got married. So you can search up their archive. Search my name. It'll come up. Okay, wonderful day, Eden. So we'll look at Alter Shulchan Aruch tomorrow. I'll show you the precise language that where I picked up this idea, and then we'll continue the Gemara's very fascinating discussion on this whole business of negative spiritual forces.
Yeah. Sorry.
I guess whenever there's a possibility of a negative force, we try to find an exception to the rule. We try to.
Well, we're going to see soon. The Gemara is going to lay down this principle, which is if you don't care about it, it doesn't care about you.
Right, like dreams and such.
Similar. The Gemara is going to make such a comment. Before the Gemara does, the Gemara is going to talk about people who were worried about it and how they were and what they did to try to deal with it.
Too.
Similar thing. Yeah, I'll share with you what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein writes about it. Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well.
Goes into that?
Yeah.
Ayin Hara.
This Gemara doesn't talk about Ein Hara, but
Right.
but Rabbi Feinstein borrows from what the Gemara says here and applies it to Ein Hara. We'll get there. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful day.